Jules, I don't know if you remember, but my first Easter here 2 years ago, you and Bill Dyke read the same reading that Easter, Sunday morning. And Bill was really sharp. He simply came up and said, "I'm now going to read the English translation." I don't remember that. I do pay attention to every single thing you do. I've heard many, many wonderful sermons on Easters over the past 40 years of my ministry. I've heard sermons that focus and start off trying to catch children's attention and reminding them where the legend of the Easter Bunny comes from and how it's associated with the first creatures to visit the empty tomb. Or where the Easter egg comes from, the fact that if you do it right, the egg should be empty because the tomb is empty. Last night we heard Easter connected to having enough of the risen Christ, put in the perspective of an Inuit village in Alaska, it's a vicious experience. I'm going to ask you two questions, because for me these are the questions of Easter. This is what it's about. And the questions are, what are you looking for, and why are you trying? Those two questions focus why we're here today. We're told two men raced to the tomb, and they've been told by a woman who's a companion of theirs, the tomb is empty, and what the scriptures don't say is they think she's stupid. They think she's hysterical. It's kind of ironic and very arrogant on their part. They have to see for themselves because they weren't there when their teacher was crucified. All the guys ran away. The only people who were there were women, and they're the ones who went to the tomb. They should have known where they were going. The guys didn't know where. They had to ask for directions. If they did. The guys get there. The people who claimed they did not know him, who ran away when he was arrested, one of whom who denied him. And they come to a place and they find nothing. This is the place of death. This is a place where the evil one has power, and that power up to that moment had been certain. And we all know about death and tombs and evil. We read it on the internet, we watch it on TV, we hear it. We know about the execution of college students in Kenya because they were Christian. We know that a person who is sick in mind decides to kill himself and brings a whole plane down with him. We know of children who die in our city because they're the victims of gunshot wounds, intentional or they're simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. We know about trains that kill people and terrible accidents. One in this room who was a survivor of that incident. We know about death. They race to an empty place like a hole in their souls. But when they find nothing, it doesn't mean anything on its own. It's interesting, it's curious, but finding nobody there, what does it mean? The body was moved, stolen. Grave robbery is an old profession. It's the second oldest profession of humankind. And that's truthful, unfortunately. Nothing but a burial shroud and a death cloth. It's curious, so what do? They go home. They leave there. And I hope that is not what Easter is about for any of you. A mad dash of temporary excitement to a building. Because this building will be empty. You're here now worshiping, but in an hour or so it's going to be empty. It usually is. Do we just rush here to do something and then leave with disappointment? Because this is about faith. Faith is not confirmed by the empty tomb. Faith is confirmed only when you encounter the risen Christ. And that's something only you can do. Which leads us to the second question. The men ran away and walked away. One woman again stayed, and her name was Mary of Magdala. And she will not go home until she finds the body. She reminds me a little bit of my mom in terms of her tenacity and her spunk. It's a person I honestly feel I would not want to have crossed. She was a woman who was healed. That's all we know about her. And she becomes part of the group. And apparently becomes a leader within the group, you want to say, which was amazing given that culture where women had no leadership role. So filled with grief, finally, in the midst of tears, when she hears her name called, she she realizes the teacher is not dead, that his life is greater than death, and that he claims her by name as risen Lord. So instead of focusing on all of the teachings and the philosophies and the attitudes and the events that put death on the horizon, and while it's true there are reasons to cry, because life will inflict its wounds, take a breath. Out of the darkness, the risen Christ, the same risen Christ, called you by name. You were named on the day of your baptism, and you were claimed for eternal life by him personally. And in spite of all the power that death and sin and evil have, the only tears we need to cry are tears of joy. Our God has walked among us. Our God has lived among us. He has died for us. He has redeemed us. And we are children of the resurrection. And just as he experienced death and burial, so did we on the day we were baptized. And when those waters came over us, we were raised up from the power of sin and hopelessness and evil and death. On the day we were baptized, we were given life that will never go away. All we need to do is believe and take the word seriously and know that Jesus is not a name in a history book. He is the living, risen Lord who knows you, who lived for you, who claims you. You are known to him by name as certainly as he addressed Mary at the tomb. You have been redeemed from sin. His Spirit has been poured into you. And if you choose to live it, you have a share in his risen life. So welcome to Easter. This is more than finding an empty place. It's more than finding a pretty church, even though it is a beautiful church. This is about life being greater than death and hope being greater than sadness. For this is the day the Lord has made. Let us be glad and rejoice.